These drums just give me the chills.
Mm.
Like I just felt that on the top of my head. Some compelling ThursdAGE music today. Chad will have to tell me what you think about that.
Shall I tell the story of this music?
You know what? Why don't we? Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay, so back in 2018, we had a Kickstarter. Green Onion had a Kickstarter for a setting based on the Lost Citadel transmedia intellectual property. I originally worked on Lost Citadel because I contributed to a short story in that setting. And the basic idea behind Lost Citadel is that it is the undead apocalypse, but sent to a fantasy world. Like it's like the zombie apocalypse. It's set with a little more diversity and corporeal undead. And through the course of the history of the setting, the living survivors all gather into one fortified dwarven city, and that's kind of where they make their last stand across several generations. So we successfully kickstarted it, but then we had some emergencies and things slowed down a bit. But then recently we finally kind of got it cleaned up, and one of the stretch goals was to produce a soundtrack for the setting. So consequently, we worked through Sirenscape, and they were really nice and really helpful, and they really wanted to make sure they kind of did it the way we wanted it done. And they got a composer named Michael Gordon Shapiro, who looked over the notes, looked over my comments, and produced music like this.
Well, friends, you're tuning in now. This is ThursdAGE, and you're hearing Malcolm talk about this amazing track that's playing. And the track is named Redoubt, I think, right? Am I saying that right? Redoubt?
Yeah.
I always call it Redoubt. It's one of those words.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone say on mass media or anything.
Right, exactly. Also with us, of course, you hear Owen KC Stephens. This is kind of the pre-show, pre-funk. Wow, this music is just, I mean, it really, the Sirenscape folks just outdid
and
themselves.
To make it age relevant, one of the things we did is we did produce a 5e, big old 5e source book for the Lost Citadel, and that can be purchased in our store. However, where it becomes relevant to here, now, today, ThursdAGE, is that as one of the other stretch goals, we designed a Fantasy Age adaptation.
Nice.
So if you have the 5e book and the Fantasy Age book, you can run it perfectly well in Fantasy Age.
And if you play that song and you play Fantasy Age, it all lines up. Like
it all lines up.
Yeah, it's really amazing. But you know what else is amazing? Hey, friends, Owen KC Stephens, Malcolm Sheppard. You know, it's been Cthulhu all day, all night, and I don't mind. I'm having a blast. And, you know, just a lot of great stuff happening. Oh, great. Duke's here. Hi, Duke. Who did the art for this background image? And no, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? Some incredible artist.
Hal would know, but
are you talking about the tentacle, or are you talking about the Cthulhu Awakens logo? Because I think that was Hal. I did the tentacle ThursdAGE, and then the background. I think that's just space.
Oh, okay.
Just a picture I found.
Oh, I thought it was maybe that picture of Sean with a mansion.
No. Oh, that first one. Yes. If you're talking about the very first one, that is Sean. Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, Sean is one of our iconics in modern age, and also in Cthulhu Awakens, actually. That particular picture actually has its origins in the Modern Age Companion, which, funnily enough, contains a number of systems that kind of represent a few first steps in the process that kind of gave us some of Cthulhu Awakens' mechanical distinctiveness. There are some tweaks to Age that were initially done in the companion that were more fully realized.
Nice.
In Awakens. So.
Nice. Well, so today we're talking about the huge announcement. It was a big announcement, a shifting of the offerings, gifts, to be unlocked, stretch goals that are. What did you say? Less stretch, more
Less stretchy.
less stretchy. Yes, less stretchy stretch goals. What does that mean ultimately?
What it means, aside from the fact that I'm fiddling with my lights, sorry about that.
That's all right.
It's a weird day here. What that means is originally we had the stretch goals paced out for every 10,000 up to 60, and then we had stretch goals every 15,000. However, a couple of things happened. The first was we wanted more backers faster.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest. That's what we want. We want you to go back this thing.
Hey, yeah, no shame in our game, right?
We're pushing it like we are
doing it for a living.
We're PBS and we're holding some British program hostage.
That's right.
I'll say Poldark because I'm watching Poldark right now, but I think that's finished. But enough about my PBS habits. So that was one of the reasons. The other reason was that some of the stretch goals ended up being, some of the stretch goals ended up being a bit bigger, right? And so they merited kind of chopping them up. And we especially wanted to showcase some of the stretch goals that featured original expansions to Cthulhu Awakens, because we kind of been going back and forth between stretch goals that expand Awakens and stretch goals that give you modern age stuff, because the two systems are pretty compatible with each other. But we read some feedback and things, and so we wanted to showcase that stuff more, and that meant squeezing in some more published stretch goals between here and $100,000. So that's what we did. We switched to having them every $10,000, and we started to break out some of the content with a little more
specificity,
more detail.
Yeah. I'm gonna actually pull that up and let us take a kind of a gander at it.
Good, because I am fumbling with the.
I left you hanging there because I was busy digging up some Cthulhu Awakens artwork, and I just went got a little intense on it. So let me see here. And
it says something about how my life has gone, that I know how to spell Cthulhu and I know how to spell Odiug and I don't know how to spell Mediterranean. I'm just saying
something. You've chosen a path, that's for sure.
Oh my goodness, I feel that deeply.
All right, I've gone crazy. There we go. Okay, so here's the more goals, less stretchy.
Less stretchy. So I guess we'll go over it.
You want to go to here,
or we won't, because Troy, you're just gonna zip right past it. I'll look at it myself.
I can go back. I'm sorry. I didn't know if you wanted to start at the stretch goals or if you.
I'm just teasing. Don't worry about it. Hold on. Now I'm waiting for my page to load.
The thing that I do love is that it's called
coordination here.
Weirdness Overflowing. It's sort of that's evocative, and the dread crawls. What a killer name for those.
Okay, so Weirdness Overflowing is again in the tradition of radical honesty, it's the book of overflow stuff that won't fit in the main book. And however, none of it is material that was originally absolutely finished and going to be in the main book. Every single thing that's going to Weirdness Overflowing is going to be expanded to one degree or another. And we kind of have it as a multi-part thing where the more the Kickstarter funds, the bigger the supplement gets. Basically, we'll add a chapter each time one of those things is knocked down. And we have 2 chapters to kind of consider that weirdness overflowing will consist of. And the first is once we hit 70,000, which is real likely, provided you back us now.
Well, here's the thing: if they're already backing,
Mhm.
you basically want to share it with all your friends. You want to like I said, on socials, you want to share it with your momthulhu.
Unless that would be really annoying, because we do have limits.
They could be annoying.
No. We trust you, our community, to know how to proselytize for Cthulhu without people constantly chanting and wishing that cats would take you to the moon.
It's not like we're asking them to be cultists or anything.
All right. So
use your best judgment.
Speaking of cults, he said, awkwardly segueing. So yeah, basically at 70,000, that funds the first chapter, which is a 32-page chapter called Cults of the Mythos, which is basically going to go over all of the cults, or nearly all of the cults and organizations listed in the main book in detail, along with some rules for tracking the evolution of organizations and how they get into conflict. And I'm looking forward to that latter part, because I have had we've done organization rules before in different age games, but I have some big ideas about how I kind of want to take things to the next level as far as that goes.
Can we pick your brain a bit, or is it too fresh and too?
Basically, what I'm looking for is ways to really integrate activity across scales. So this is where I'm going to get a little abstract.
That's what we love about you.
We have a number of related systems right now that are published in different age games, where we conceive of the organization as kind of a type of character, and the characters have, and as a character, the organization has abilities and focuses, and it clashes and things like that. In the modern age companion, can you hear me? I just got a notice on the page here.
Oh, I can hear you. Yeah. You're sounding good. You're sounding real good. No worries.
In the modern age companion, we started talking about how you could take personal abilities and substitute them for the organizational abilities to represent PCs running different aspects of an organization. So what I want to do is, and I sort of have this in the embryonic stage, is have kind of story-driven pivot points where individual actions in a story or the result of a scenario is going to cause something to happen to the organization with which you're affiliated, right? And part of this has to do with a bit of a shift that happens in Cthulhu Awakens, where we turn membership from a generic Benny that you get, a generic benefit that your character gets, to a talent, right? So you have to invest some character juice into that, right? And as you're investing character juice into that, that means that I want that integrated into the rules, so it is very explicitly functional, and not what is sometimes called, and I think this term was invented by Mike Merles or Wizard of the Coast, a Mother May I kind of ability. Yeah, Owen's nodding. He knows what I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
Do you want to?
Nope.
The Mother May I thing is a cool ability that you have, but you kind of need to be invited by the GM to use it, right? Because it's only relevant if that condition comes up, right? And one of the examples in Dungeons and Dragons and related games is a ranger's ability to track stuff, right? It's not much of a character asset unless the DM is going, here are some tracks all the time, right?
Right.
And you also have some things like that for like anything involving riding a horse, I find, is kind of like that. Unless unless you have very large castles and very open-minded inn owners who don't mind you. So yeah, basically, I would like getting involved in an organization, using an organization to really be something that can be triggered proactively, and where you don't have to ask the GM if the organization is somehow relevant at this place and time, or there's a local, if there's like the cult local 132 over in the
right
over in the cult district, so that's kind of what I want to do with.
So some cultist solidarity. I like that. And so these cults then, are they organizations? Are they? I'm imagining they go a little bit broader than sort of like the standard issue cult.
Well, the classic Lovecraftian cult is, a hidden organization filled with unhinged people who want to raise up some kind of eldritch power, right? And
this sounds a lot like a Green Ronin staff meeting. I mean,
it's yeah, pretty much.
For as many of those eldritch, sort of powers that we've summoned and just unleashed on the world, I guess, yeah, we count.
Well, yeah, but it really varies. I want these rules to also be able to cover other stuff too, right? Like,
okay,
we have a number of organizations that we really want to be player character friendly. Not that like Mythos cults can't be player character friendly. It's just that is not a becoming a cultist who wants to bring Cthulhu to Earth, while we have systems that fully support it, is not the typical Lovecraftian campaign arc. So we respect that. So, for example, we have an organization called Locke, right, which is basically the extremely careful librarians who work in Misty Valley Junior College, which is the institution nobody talks about that is in Arkham and is not Miskatonic University. So, and they have several dangerous books under lock and key. So they have an organization. Or you have the Implicit Cartography Group, who are basically they're a bunch of intelligence analysts who have kind of cheat because they were given a big trove of documents from the future, right? And have kind of parlayed that into collecting various weird things. And they might be a tool for the Yithians to manipulate history so that we don't die too soon, and we allow our beetle successors to evolve.
Right.
Which I know I keep going on about it, but I just love that. I just love the whole wacky Yithian time travel thing.
Yeah, so, I do too. Yeah, I love it.
That's the thing that you get at 70,000.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah. We put enemies and allies at 80,000, and enemies and allies is something where with almost no work, you can just lift the stat blocks and use them. And one of the neat things about the Mythos as a source of inspiration for campaigns is that it is so broad, right? Elements of it are fantasy, and elements of it are horror, and elements of it are science fiction, right? So we have chapters covering creatures and NPCs related to science fiction, fantasy, and horror, as well as various specialists and also crime drama stuff. So you also have a whole Prince of Darkness. Sorry, David Bodie, is that it?
Oh, yes, yeah, it's Bodie, yeah.
That movie, I love it, and I can't stand watching it at the same time. And also, it always amuses me, and this is where I show my age a bit, that it has Jameson Parker from Simon and Simon in it.
Simon and Simon, wow.
Simon and Simon.
It's taking me back.
I almost feel like Prince of Darkness as a movie is whatever you make of it, whereas a movie often ought to be what the movie makers made of it. Because it feels like some chunk of the script fell out and they just forgot to film that part. But what they filmed is often brilliant.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. and it also contains the first recorded instance of a cosmic horror trolling someone via IRC, right?
That's right.
Because that happens, right? Like,
hey, Daniel, it does happen to us on a
Pixel
regular
Creature
basis,
says,
but
none of you will survive at all in
yes,
green terminal text.
that's
Right?
right.
It's
Hey, Daniel, I got to tell you, Daniel says, I'm so excited for Cthulhu Awakens and can't wait to run it as well as adapt it for all my age games. Here's how excited I am about it. We're doing an actual play tonight.
ooh.
Tonight at 5 p.m. Ian is Ian Lemke
5 p.m. in what time zone, Troy?
I will just get to that in one moment. But Ian
Sorry.
Lemke, no worries. Ian Lemke is our, you might know him from such things as well, a lot of things, but The Expanse, as well as, he's contributed to Cthulhu Awakens, and he's put together quite a deal. Revelations of the Bacchae. Okay. Wow. Session 0, Cthulhu Awakens. It's going to be an actual play. That's tonight, and it's going to start at 5 p.m. Pacific, 7, 8. Yeah, that's 8 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, I had to count on my fingers. I always do that. But yeah, so that is happening, here in all of the places. So if you want to come and see, and something else that you'll see is my body. I will be embodied. I will be participating. As a fully realized, at least maybe not emotionally, but a fully realized human being, and I'm really excited for what he's got cooked up. And so we'll be doing this session 0, kind of going over some of the aspects of it, and then we'll have some actual play action moving through the rest of the campaign.
Nice.
So for those of you that have always suspected that Troy is actually 3 raccoons in a trench coat, we're going to prove that's not the case.
No, it's 4 raccoons in a tight lycra bodysuit.
that makes so much more sense.
It's really, really does. It's what all the squeaking and sort of noises are going on. They're just stuck in there.
I just wanted to point out the 2 other things after Enemies and Allies, which is again kind of our monster manual for modern age, but it's compatible with Cthulhu Awakens, which is why it's in there. But at 90,000, we are going to have an adventure set in the 60s.
I love it.
And that is going to currently the plans are that it's going to be produced by our very own Alex Thomas.
Nice.
Who you may know from Mondays.
That's right, Mutants and Masterminds Monday, and he recently just released his first Danger Zone, I believe. It was a Danger Zone. Yeah, that's up on the Green Ronin store. But so I'm looking forward to that, and he's so good. I love the guy, even though he's 12 and has done more at this age than I have done to date. So we're not bitter. But okay, so looking at this, next up is.
All right, is the next chapter of Weirdness Overflowing. And this is something that was originally going to be in the core book, but our emphasis moved away from that being the distinctive element to the Weird Century being the distinctive element. However, it was so cool that, of course, I wanted to keep it. So it's going to be here, and that is the Demi Moans. And the Demi Moans in Cthulhu Awakens are a number of alternate universes that are reachable through a phenomenon called the corridor. The corridor appears in different places in the different timelines. In 1924 Arkham, it is an old mine shaft. In Italy, it is some coastal caves, and so on and so forth. But the main thing is each one takes you to an alternate universe in a different time. So, for example, if you go to Cartagena, Italy, that is a city that does not exist in the other timelines. It is specific to that timeline. And that's the same with, it becomes really obvious once we get to, New Amsterdam, New Netherlands, right? Because we're going to an alternate universe where, we just had a very different history than the United States. And what happens is when you go through the corridor, your mind occupies the body of someone in that timeline, in that alternate timeline. So you have continuity, right? Because you reappear each time, right? So this gives you a chance to sort of bop around different alternate histories and explore the mythos in ways where it may never have appeared, or in the future, or in a kind of future when the bulk of your story and your characters take place in the past. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, and that's awesome.
It is kind of evocative of, really it goes back to the Yellow King. It goes back to Chambers, right? Because one of the stories, one of the collected stories, takes the Repair of Reputations, takes place in what was to Chambers the future. And he describes a future United States, which for us, I think is, I forget, is it the 20s or 30s? But is very different from how history eventually turned out, right? Now, I can't go any further into this without plugging a completely different game.
Right.
That I love, the Gumshoe Robin Laws Yellow King RPG. It is one of the most impressive, focused, all-in-one RPGs I have ever seen. So, after you back our Kickstarter, go over to Pelgrane and pick up the Yellow King. And in fact, feel free to, we have no official relationship with them, but I encourage you to,
we can be officially friends.
Whatever you can from that. It's just, So basically, we're going to have a big treatment of these different alternate timelines and alternate eras for you to jump through, and also some guidelines for creating more than the set that we have. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then after $100,000, here's the thing. We do have more Dread Crawls issues coming, and we do have more Weirdness Overflowing chapters.
So to be clear, that issue 0 is that's the exclusive for the early backers. They get that free.
They get that free. Yeah, they're the only ones who get that free. So the other issues are going to be 1 and 2, and anybody could conceivably get those once they come up. But for them to come up, we have to get to $100,000.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Let's do that.
I say let's.
All right. Okay. And how you two have convinced me.
Okay. You're like, all right, I'll do it. So the thing to remember about this is that, friends, we need your help to do that. We definitely do. And it does feel a little PBS-y, but we need you to spread the word. We've got some great interviews coming up. We've got some, we're going to be bringing in some folks who may not be familiar with Age, but the thing that's great is even the adventure game engine being something you can pick up. Are we being? Is that like a spaceship?
Cthulhu meets Sliders, eh?
That's what I was.
The last season of Sliders.
I love that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So,
but what I was going to say is that one of the things that really makes it work, the adventure game engine and just gaming in general, is when people feel welcomed and they feel like people are listening, and they feel like, so if you've got some friends that have kind of been hanging around, kind of wondering what it's about, invite them to a stream, invite them to come watch a live or an actual play, ask some questions, bring a new friend around, share with them this information, get them to chip in, and, really everybody gets a prize. Right? I can only throw so much money at the screen.
Well, I mean, like I said, we are very happy to share as much of the stuff coming out of this process as possible.
That's what I love about this. Yeah, I mean, really, people, you are very willing to kind of sit and have this interaction and dialogue, and we've got some art that's coming, and some other updates that I don't want to spoil, but some really exciting ones that are just around the corner that I think will pique a lot of interest, both for people who are just straight up Cthulhu Mythos fans, and then people who really want, some of that good juicy stuff in their gameplay, right?
Mm-hmm. Actually, I have a question.
Yeah.
For the crowd, would people be interested in having Deep One player characters?
Oh,
Ooh.
We can't do full on Deep Ones. Like, we can't do like unstoppable immortal fish people, but there is, degrees of Deep Oneness, and we actually have some systems that reflect that. So I'm just wondering if folks would be interested in that, because I want to see, maybe I'll tuck it in somewhere.
Jonesy said yes, and I could hear it. I could hear it from here.
The degree is just a little past the Innsmouth look, is what you're thinking?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And the other thing, I guess, is that people have been just getting on my case about, like, why don't you have something like the Churn in the Expanse, but for Cthulhu Awakens, just because the Churn is so cool. All right, well, if I did
it is.
Mm-hmm. And it's and it actually, there's a generic version of the Modern Age Companion called Complications, and if I were to do it, I would really want to tune it for the setting, so that it is more than the generic tool that is already floating out there. So I don't know, if you're interested, then tell Troy or something, and then
sure.
get on my case about it. And
I will. I'm happy to get on Malcolm's case. I'm always asking him to do weird stuff.
We'll figure it out.
Absolutely. So send a note to let's play at greenronin.com. And, I'm curious. There's a bunch of, let's see. I like this. Oh. Oh, dear. It does sort of paint a picture, an evocative. Those bulbous eyes and scaly hips. Sounds like a Saturday night. Hey, I wanted to ask you. Sean Vieira said, I was just curious what this meant. Maybe you said interesting and maybe. Sean, I'm curious as to what the maybe is. We just like to kind of get into the stuff behind there. And Jacob, I understand what you're saying too.
It's always a little tricky having, unusual character types, because there is a question of focus, right? However, we are, if you look at D&D and you look at a lot of RPGs right now, fantasy RPGs in particular, the idea of having kind of a small set of character types, of a small set of character ancestries and backgrounds, really seems to have been replaced by a more freewheeling approach, right? Where the center is really more on, you can take whatever you want from the menu, but you kind of have to work with the game master to integrate it, right? So, and I have to admit, I do have gray hair, but just as I am more willing to accept things like player character kobolds and stuff like that, I'm more open to maybe doing this kind of thing too.
Okay, all right. I do like that she gave me the Innsmouth look.
And and also I have some ideas about how that works, and I'm babbling now. So
no, you're not. You're not. No, I mean, here's the thing. This is that time of the day on Thursday where what we do is we get together and we babble. Literally, like just unfettered babble.
Yeah.
People don't like it, they can go somewhere else, and they end up loving it anyway. So,
There's
so have to have all the players buy in, and where that
Mhm.
adventure or campaign direction is going need to fit the players and the game everyone wants. Okay, sure, okay, yeah. So if it were still sort of in kind of in the domain, or sort of in the control of the GM, that would still kind of make it a
well,
negotiation between player and GM.
Well, you just basically have to have reasons for everybody to be able to get together and cooperate and basically function as a group. And we kind of have this built in to modern age and into Cthulhu Awakens, because we have the drive mechanic, which is that it is axiomatic that you want to get involved in the story. You're not allowed to play a character who's uninterested in the story.
Gotcha. So, which is great. I mean, that just sort of
it's especially important with Mythos, right? Because I have discovered unfortunate, noisome, and disquieting things lurking in the background. I think I'm going to walk away. That's a perfectly reasonable and rational response. There is nothing illogical about, oh, look, most of the world is perfectly safe and rational, and here's a dark little corner where magic and horror and super science all mix with messages from aliens from the future. I beg you not to make me part of those. That's a reasonable thing for someone to think to do, which is why you want to make sure that there is a system in place that players know that their characters will not be hit by hooks and dragged screaming into the storyline. They want to go poke the dead story with sticks. That's what we want you to do.
Gotcha.
To become active.
Yeah. And I think bonds, which include relationships in Cthulhu Awakens, but are much wider, can be a way to do that too, because you can say that you have a bond with another character, and you can work that all out ahead of time, or you can have a kind of abstract session zero where you talk about how everybody got together and you establish your bonds then, and you have a bit of a collective backstory too, right? That can be supported with things like individual and collective blue booking and things like that. Certainly that's doable. It's just a matter of integrating the guidance in with the here's the rules for some funky fish people. So
Malcolm, from one graybeard to another, I perfectly well know what you mean by blue booking, but I bet we have people with less gray in their beard that are not familiar with it as a gaming term as opposed to a college essay term.
Like me, you old geezers.
Oh, my children.
Gather around, and Father Sheppard will tell you about the old days.
Yeah, let me get my bad knees closer to the fire. And okay, actually, the term blue booking was originally totally alien to me because I am Canadian, and so those little blue books that exams come in, or that you put exam answers on, or whatever you do, I have only seen them a handful of times.
Because Canadians don't have books, right? I mean, is that why?
Well, we do. Has gravy on it, so
gravy books.
They're all in the library, so you have to memorize them.
I see.
So
there's one now.
Yeah, so you just spend a lot of time reading very angrily to hope to enjoy the book again in the future. But no, the thing is okay. So blue booking is basically recording character actions that are happening between, like, the classic version of blue booking is recording character actions between sessions that don't require game mechanics. Indeed, R.I.P. Aaron Alston, who invented blue booking. And basically, instead of bothering your GM and rolling dice with them, you basically, within the confines of things that don't require dice rolls, you talk about what your character is up to, right? People who have LARPed, worked in done stuff in a ongoing LARP, like a weekly, monthly stuff, they do a lot of this, and they call it downtime, right? And and it's a really good idea for ongoing games to kind of help establish that the characters are three-dimensional, that they're up to things, and it also means that your sessions can be more focused because you're not talking about how you went to the store and you bought more ammunition for your gun and you got a new pair of boots and you got a bigger house and you put a lock on, like, because that is handled in the blue booking phase, right?
Gotcha.
So
yeah.
that means that you can really focus on the story. So it's great. And I recommend you do it. Nowadays,
and then it's kind of your shared history, right? Then like you don't have to act it all out for everyone to see and understand it. You got I like that.
Like nowadays, of course, you can also do that electronically through blogging. You can have kind of an annex where you're doing no rules chat based RP, right? And all of that stuff. So really the options for doing that are much broader than they used to be. I have to confess that sometimes I feel a little left in the dust. I follow a lot of online roleplay stuff that isn't necessarily connected to published games, like CYOAs, Jump Chain, fandom RPs, things like that. I find them really interesting, and I think they have a lot to teach those of us rolling the dice and scowling at the grids.
That's what they call it. We're gonna scowling at the grids.
Scowling at the grids.
I like it. Great. All right, that's interesting. I had not known. I've not heard about blue booking, and like Sean, I say thank you. And you said Aaron Alston.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he was a game designer. One of the very first game designers I actually got to spend time with because he was in Texas and I was in Oklahoma. And he did some great stuff in Champions and Car Wars, Auto Duel Champions.
Car
Wars,
also
a novelist. Wow. And Aaron Alston's Strike Force book, which they did a revised version of, has a lot of information on it. So
I love that cat.
Yeah, that's my cat, Tybalt.
Tybalt heard you.
God's
yeah, it's so great.
Oh, yeah.
Good kitty. So, okay. I'm trying to ask the right questions. I know what questions to ask to kind of like get to some information that I don't want to spill. So I'm going to try not to do that. It's very tempting to do that on stream, just for the fun of it. But when people are kind of preparing their characters, in this mythos space, do you have some thoughts or advice? Because that was everybody right now. Everyone's sitting around thinking about what they can do and the character they're going to make. And now you've thrown this fish face people thing out there, and now people are all thinking about that. But
it's not necessarily happening. If you're interested, just let me know.
And that's important. That's important.
If I remember, maybe I'll do it.
Well, Malcolm, we have a contract with people when they pop into the chat, whether it's on Mutants Masterminds Monday or it's ThursdAGE, that we get to wax a little poetic. We get to be a little creative, and people understand that we're not committing to doing a thing, but oftentimes great things do come as a result of the conversations we have here. So, it is definitely a safe place to be creative, and people will understand that. It's tuna time. Mm-hmm. But so how would you go about, like, let's say there was somebody this evening that they were about to play in an actual play, and they were trying to develop sort of the depth of character. What kind of advice would you give them if they had 2 hours to figure it out?
Yeah. And they were, let's say for the sake of argument that they were, a natural extrovert named Groy Twit, who often is not seen but is quite often heard. So what I would say to Groy is is basically think of one thing you want your character to be able to reliably do, right? And then in Cthulhu Awakens, the way to get that is to get the ability related to making the rolls, the focus related to making those rolls better, and the talent that will add a little cherry on top to that. And so and the best way to figure that out is kind of just see what everybody else says they want to be good at.
Okay.
And then I think for one shots, I think this is the way to go, because for ongoing games, overlapping.
Quiet you, not you, Malcolm, but
because it's because the personalities eventually differentiate the character, right?
Yeah.
Which is why you have the classic Party of Bards scenario where everybody has a different big personality.
Right. I'm actually thinking about playing it.
Blue Rose.
Right. That's right. Yeah, exactly. I'm actually thinking of playing it. Actually, not quite. I'm not going to ham it up. I mean, that's the natural go-to thing, But I think I might try to be serious.
Yeah, I think the best way to do horror, I think, is to look at your character's drive, right? And think of the ways in which you do not want to follow your character's drive.
Okay, all right.
Here's the thing. Your character will also have that inner conflict, right? If the drive is pushing you towards something dangerous, right? Then that is like, well, part of me doesn't want to do it, right? But I'm still going to do it. So once you have a sense of that conflict and you can talk about it, right? And don't think of this as an abstract, breathing exercise, do as if method acting thing. Like, you can just write this down, right? You write down, when I get pulled into danger because of my drive, which is X, I also feel like going away, right? Now, your drive is always going to win, but you'll have that conflict and you'll be able to talk about it with the other characters, right? And then you'll approach the horror with an appropriate level of gravity without mugging.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So that's what I think the way to go is just to be very specific. And also, don't be afraid to... If the most economic way of getting across how you're feeling or what you're doing is just to say those things, it's okay. You don't need to do dialogue as if you're your character all the time.
Right.
I think some people treat that as like the gold standard of role playing, but it's a group process, right? And role playing is not like TV, and it's not like movies, and it's not like theater. In some ways, it is like simultaneously writing and reading a play. And that includes things like stage directions, because you're always talking about things like, I go over here and do this.
Right.
So that is a perfectly valid way of expressing yourself, even down to the emotional components, right? And sometimes one of the best ways to really get everybody on side is just plain speaking about how your character feels and what their motives are, instead of trying to express it indirectly by acting, right?
Okay, yeah.
Acting is good, right? Please keep on acting when you feel like acting, but you can relax and not act sometimes and just talk, and that's fine. And it's a perfectly valid way of playing. And for some people, that is the way they're most comfortable doing it, and that's fine too. Unless you are in a group that has very specific creative goals, right down to the style of play, which is generally only the case for pro streamers, where everybody has to be inside and speaking the same way, acting the same way, and keeping that vibe. Unless you're on that level, or you are doing something fairly serious internally, which is also valid. It's okay. Sometimes we get so into the idea we have to have fun, we forget that some of the fun can come from serious stuff. But unless you're there, it's okay to take a break.
Gotcha. I like that.
Say what you're gonna say.
which is great because I've been working on my Scottish brogue and I don't quite have it down yet. So it'll come in, it'll come out, is what I'm saying. It'll be just.
Scottish brogue is only for dwarves in role playing games. So
well, I'm going to be a dwarven fish person, and yeah, and I'll sound like this. I can kind of like that. Which sort of sounded like Scottish and someone with gas, I guess.
I was going to say it sounded like a dwarf drowning, which is actually pretty close to what one would expect from a dwarvish fish person.
That is true. That is the sound that they would make. Okay, so that's tonight. Thank you, Malcolm. That was solid advice. I really appreciate that. And I'm already sort of, the wheels are turning. And Jonesy, you calling me out on stream. Jonesy's my buddy. But yeah, it wasn't so much that I didn't finish. It was that I just kind of arrived at the right time. And so that'll be fun. That's tonight. Ian Lemke, we will be doing the session 0. Now it's going to be actually a few sessions. So we'll kind of get into that, and we'll share information about the cast and all of that. The revelations of the Buckeye. I think that's how you say it. Buckeye?
Buckeye.
You're
getting dangerously
revelations
close
of the Buckeyes.
You're getting dangerously close to the revelations of the Buckeye, which don't get me wrong. I don't have an issue with Buckeye, but the horrors of Ohio is a slightly different.
I had forgotten which one was the Buckeye State.
Yeah, I was thinking more like a chicken, like a just sort of like a real intense chicken, kind of like that.
You go to the Midwest, instead of non-Euclidean horror, you have just like non-geographical feature horror.
Right, just flat and taupe.
Just flat.
Shades of taupe.
The terror of watching your dog run away from you for 3 days.
Right, you can just watch it running for 3 days. Come back, I see you still. That is so funny. Owen, I wanted to check in with you and say, what's cooking? You got something before we kind of wrap? Anything you want to share or get into? Let people know about?
So obviously the focus here is on the Cthulhu Awakens role-playing game.
We're reaching the end of the stream,
which is doing really nicely. But I will say that I'll have a separate Kickstarter that I'm doing with Ron Lundeen, who's a developing manager over at Paizo, and he has his own 1st through 20th level Pathfinder second edition adventure path called the Scaldwood Blight, and we're down on the last week of that, and we are about halfway through the amount of funds we would have to raise to also have a 1st edition Pathfinder version. So if you're excited about possibly having a professional 1st through 20th level adventure by, I believe Ron has written more Pathfinder official adventures than any other writer. I could be off by one. It could be Greg, but I think it's wrong. Then this is an opportunity to go and back it and pledge it and make it as big and meaty as we possibly can. So that's the other thing that is taking up a fair amount of my time and attention.
I hear that. And then how's the blog going? You got anything cooking over there?
I've been doing Starfinder spell conversions from 1st edition Pathfinder to Starfinder all this week. And then last week was more generic fantasy tavern concepts that you could drop into any game, along with pictures of the interior and the exterior. But that's OwenKCStephens.com.
Nice.
And that has links to my Patreon and my Coffee, where you can find pictures of my housemate's cat, which is in many ways more popular than I am. So
no, that's like Lord Puddington's of Chubbingsworth.
It's Lord Alphonse Tubbington of Sausage on Chunk, Order of the Big Biter.
Nice.
Although on his mother's side, he's a Fluffenstein.
Oh, I see. Stately families, nonetheless. And my question for you is, if someone does then get into the Ko-Fi, do they get knighted in some, do they become kind of, is there a courtly thing that's going on here?
So far, Lord Tubbington has kept all his rewards purely photographic. There are illustrations and pictures of him there that are not posted anywhere else. He's a very private cat and does not like to be spread too far and wide. So it's a place for his fan base to come together and see all the pictures of him I've taken. And then occasionally I put up pictures of cheese dice and weird kit bash miniatures I put together too. So
well, that's amazing. Cheese dice are delicious. Hey, Malcolm, anything that you've got cooking outside of this phenomenal Cthulhu Awakens Kickstarter? It's just gangbusters.
Okay, so the one thing I wanted to bring up is because I saw it on our social media stream the other day, was questions about, well, wouldn't it be great if there was a science fiction thing for Modern Age? And in fact,
that's right. I remember that.
Something like that is coming this year. I mentioned it before, but yes, there's going to be a short cyberpunk supplement, cyberpunk slice, coming for Modern Age. It's written, it's in the queue. Steve Kenson and I worked on it. So
it's going to be amazing. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to I'll share this snippet directly with that question. I remember exactly who asked it. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I wanted to kind of get that up. And for me personally, I don't know, nothing game related. I run a historical fencing club in my spare time.
I like that.
If you ever see me at a convention or, in the possible future where we can start seeing
just attack, right?
Again, I'm always up for talking about historical fencing.
And you carry a sword around with you at all times.
I don't carry a sword around with me at all times.
That's what he says, but he's lying.
One in view at all times.
Yeah, that's right. There's one in view at all times. And the interesting thing is when you meet Malcolm in person, he still looks like he's in the witness protection program, sort of testifying on screen.
Oh, God, sorry about that.
Not too long ago.
Yeah, the lighting in here, I didn't put my ring light on. And I look extra dodgy because I'm wearing okay, one thing I have to say to the audience is that I'm actually not normally a hat guy. But the thing is often I'm doing these things after I've kind of spent the day curled up on my couch working, and my hair is kind of a greasy mess. So I just kind of throw this on, right?
Yeah.
But, normally I'm not walking around, with this and like a bead necklace. No disrespect intended to anybody who's rocking that style. I mean, God.
You're not dissing the beatniks, right? Is that...
Listen, people loved that in '98. Okay, they loved a lot of things that were less good. Like
that is true.
There were a lot of shiny fabrics.
Yeah, that is true.
There were a lot of shiny fabrics. Now, the funny thing for me when dealing with the fact that Malcolm actually knows stuff about swords, whereas I just have to decide, does it do a die 8 or a die 7 or a die 9? We had a picture not long ago on a message board for Grid Running where we talked to each other that had like 90 swords on the wall. And Malcolm's immediate response was, that reminds me, I need another sword. And that's just sort of his vibe, right?
Yeah.
Oh, look, yeah, no, I just remember there's another piece of man-stabbing cutlery I could
if you
advantage of.
Yeah, if anybody wants to get me like a what's called a HEMA rated basket hilted broadsword or military saber or British 18th to 19th century military saber, I could use one of those. I could use a full steel rapier. I just have a synthetic one right now. I have a couple of synthetic ones. I could probably use a targ, a rotella. That's another kind of shield that's a bit bigger than a targ. Maybe a nicer buckler. If you want to.
So basically, let me get this straight. You want a hemoglobin Baskin-Robbins rototiller with a buckle.
That's right.
Okay.
That is the most impressive collection of mistranslated gobbledygook I have heard in a long time.
Welcome to me.
I keep threatening to shell out the money for a custom-made S-Stock.
That would be cool. I've seen a couple of them. There's some cool stuff you can do with those.
Well, you know what I've been doing over the pandemic? I have been truly, and this is true, learning. I've been throwing daggers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've gotten pretty good at the flick. Get it right in there. Yeah, it's great. And right in there, I mean, of course, the heart. And of course, I'm talking about love.
I want to say to Owen though is like one of the things you learn when you find out about swords is that beyond aesthetic stuff, when it comes to applying that to game design or gameplay, like actual swordplay is actually much less interesting than cinematic swordplay, right? Like, I don't know how familiar people are with. Okay, so in the use of the longsword, which is actually a two-handed weapon in modern nomenclature, the basic defense when somebody does the most common cut is to do the same cut first, and then they die, and that's the whole duel. That's the whole duel. Yep. There's actually an interesting game called The Riddle of Steel that was done by a historical fencing guy that simulates that really well, and is notorious for extremely short, bloody fights where somebody just falls down. Like there's good stuff, but really my interest in terms of game stuff is generally to do the high fantasy stuff, to do the stuff with stunts.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, cinematic sword fighting is more interesting to look at. Real fights of any kind tend to be nasty, brutish, and short.
That's true.
It is much more important that you be able to take out the other guy than you be able to do a spin or a roll or a flip. And that other stuff only comes in under certain circumstances where it might be useful.
And you only do that once or twice. It's not like you spend a whole kind of combat pirouetting and, sort of dipping and diving, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's normally you don't do any of that, right? It's right. It turns out not particularly efficient in most cases to pirouette in combat.
I mean, speak for yourself.
I watch a lot of sumo. I'm a big fan of sumo.
Yeah.
I had a curated sumo introduction from my friend Stan, our friend Stan.
Stan, our
who spent
buddy.
Spent some time in Japan watching sumo and talking to native people about sumo, and he got me hooked on sumo. And it is fascinating that since one of the ways you can lose a sumo match is to be pushed out of the ring, occasionally you do find 420-pound men pirouetting up on one toe because they've got momentum and they've been shoved to the very edge, and the other person might be about to fall out, and if they cannot touch the ground for just a quarter second longer, they win. Yeah. So that's that rare circumstance, but mostly sumo is about either slapping someone so hard that they lose track of what's going on, or grabbing them and throwing them down, or shoving them, right? Those are the things that 90% of matches are made up of.
And let's not forget, I mean, these are well-trained athletes.
Yeah, these are serious, major athletes. There's a great video series, which I don't remember the name of, but I'm sure you can find it on YouTube, that has professional sumotori Rikishi from Japan doing sumo matches with other professional sport-trained fighters using the sumo rules. And it is fascinating to see people that have been trained in boxing and kung fu, and judo and fencing say, it seems to me like you could just do X and that would work really well. And it turns out X does not work really well in the specific circumstance,
in the context of
the rules of sumo, right? It turns out that sumo, having been largely unchanged in how it is done for centuries, they've gotten pretty good at figuring out the best way to do it.
Yeah, Ryodo Machida, he did sumo cross training, right? And he was very successful in MMA for a while.
Yep.
Right. I envy some of what those guys can do. I did Taijiquan for like 3 years, and my push hands are okay, but you see someone who's really good at that stuff, and it looks like they're hardly moving sometimes.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they have that explosive force that I spend a lot of time by myself trying to get. I'm really trying to get the... Now I'm just talking about things that have nothing to do with gaming.
Well, I just wanted to say, hey, everybody, I wanted to welcome you to ThursdAGE. This is a new...
I'm trying to get the kind of kinetic chain sequence done, right? Because the power comes up from your feet, but it has to be guided through your hips. And everything has to kind of move at once in a very specific way. And it's so hard to do. And I spend a lot of time shoulder striking my door frames and things like that, which is...
I see. Okay. Well, you know what they say. A moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. And Duke says, once you have a blade embedded in your anything, pirouetting gets way harder than one would think, especially if you were like a balloon or something. Like you just get poked, you just fart and fly out the window. Like you'd be done.
I just want to point out to people that I know a lot of people who are familiar with any level of real world combat often look at role-playing games and go, well, these designers have no idea what they're talking about. The fact of the matter is we often do have a reasonably good idea how incredibly unrealistic game design is when it comes to things like combat. And that is one of those situations where the fact that it is a role-playing game, that gamist element, there are things that are unrealistic combat issues that make a more fun game for the majority of our audience.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if we were doing realistic combat, frequently it would be, okay, here's your combat number for skill, here's for equipment, here's for the circumstance. The other guy has the same set of numbers, and then we will roll a single die for luck, and whoever has the higher total has killed the other guy, and that's it.
That's not fun. Or you're like, here's a rock, carry this very heavy rock, and you're wearing very heavy, armor, and then, do something to hurt someone. Yeah.
Here's the thing about pirouetting with a knife in you, though. You'd kind of be like a spirograph of blood, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah.
You'd make all of these
spin arts. Yeah.
I'm going to have to start a band called Spirograph.
Spirograph of blood.
Already beat you to it. Own the URL.
Sumo talent now please come into supplemental audience. You know what? That is not a bad idea.
It's really not. I mean,
actually, one of the things I love that I've always wanted to do in games, but it's hard to do for some reason, and make interesting is sports RPG stuff, right? I think it's one of the holy grails too for game designers. But unlike pulp games, which are things that game designers love, and the general public less so, sports games are kind of the opposite. Where like once you think about it, you think, oh man, like the drama of something, like baseball. Like, oh, what was the name of that movie with?
Build it and they will come. I mean, Fields of Gravy. No, what was it?
No, the one with
Horse Called Wanda. Throw Mama from the Train.
No, the one that was all about like hiring using sabermetrics, and it had Moneyball. Yeah, like sure you can and it has a lot of it has a heavily structured plot, right?
Yeah,
and a sports league inherently has a heavily structured plot because you have the games and you have the different positions. So there's always stuff to do. So the question is how do we mechanicalize that so it is as exciting as combat? And I think there have been a few solutions to that. And often I thought sport fighting is a good venue for that kind of thing. So when I did some work in World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness, that was one of the things I suggested as one of the story hooks for this book on fighting systems I did, which is you are a traveling sumo team that also fights monsters.
I like it. You're
not a traveling judo team that also fights monsters, right? And I even wrote down some guidelines for when someone can get ippon, right, a full match ending point in judo using those rules. So yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to do more sports stuff.
I like it. Sports fighting coming to a
I got to tell you, if we did a Adventure Spark for Base Brawl, the great American monster hunting pastime, I don't know that might not actually work.
Did you make that up?
Base Brawl? Yes.
Okay.
It's spending time with Owen. This is what happens.
The trademark office because
I know, right?
Well, there's one of the risks of coming up with things on top of my head is that there is always the chance that someone beat me to it and I just haven't heard of it.
I mean,
I know it's always the way. Hold on,
but it's all about So it's a movie, 1948 cartoon. Is it? No, it's a movie. It's yellowed old. It's a cartoon.
Yeah, it's a short from 1948, and it is 2 words.
Oh, so we just ram it together and we're good. Yeah.
Yeah, they were bigger sticklers for word construction back then.
So it's like elephants playing a brawl rather. But no, you got this. Yeah, you got it. Well, listen.
And I like the tagline, "The Great American Monster Hunting Pastime." I think, and, everything is a bat.
Oh, you know what? Too, one of the things I've been really wanting to do with Modern Age, Owen, is really lean more into alt modern stuff. We haven't done it very often. Like, well, mostly because everybody has been talking about things like Disco Elysium lately, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So those settings that are not our world but are modern settings, and are not quite like, they're not alt history per se. That would be so great, and that would be a good anchor for it. I think the only other treatment we've done of that has really been Feral Hawks. Speaking of meddling kids, will there be meddling kid templates for Cthulhu Awakens? We do have guidelines to design your own stuff.
Nice.
That is the way to tell you no without saying no.
It's triple yes. It's ultra yes.
But as a game designer, I don't have much of a sense of humor.
You do too.
And I generally eliminate jokes and puns from people's drafts.
Sure. You kill joy, but you have a great sense of humor.
There's this important difference between a sense of humor and trying to interject jokes into what is effectively a technical manual on creative storytelling with rules.
Yeah.
This is hard enough to take seriously.
I like our ride. Like, there are times we kind of approach humor within kind of the context of what we're writing, but it's always sort of it's not a commitment that we make for the player.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I think my position for that, at least for most games, is really that humor just comes spontaneously in groups playing so readily that the inspiration isn't necessary because people will just find it, right?
Yeah.
And also,
there are some things like Teenagers from Outer Space that do a particularly good job of setting the stage, but even then, the actual humor value is not the stage. The stage is just designed to make the humor easier.
That's what I could see a treatment of what it would look like to create that sort of meddling kids template, and what are the elements that would be in there, and let everybody kind of do their own hamming up. But listen, you two, you're gonna take me all the way to my to my actual play tonight, and I'm not prepared yet. I got to go put on my tentacles.
Okay, all right. Well, you made the mistake of sparking a discussion between game designers about things that they care about.
Never. Truly, a joy to be able to sit and talk with you, and to be able to exchange information with with the folks in our community that are watching. I want to thank everybody who's tuned in. If you're watching this on demand, you are going to want to head over to the Kickstarter and just look for Cthulhu Awakens. You will also see the link in the chat. Check out Malcolm's new update. It breaks down all the good stuff that he's got planned, and it's thank you, Jonesy's dropping. Okay, mystery. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. One of the things I just want to encourage everybody to do if you're watching on demand is check out the chat. There's always good stuff going on in there. Links to great things, great conversations, some interesting insights, and a couple insults to me every once in a while. But that's just par for the course. Owen, Malcolm, thanks. This has been a lot of fun. I mean, I could talk to you all the way until my actual play, but I actually got to play.
I just want to say one more thing, and then I will bid you best play, Roy. And that is that we are, I think, 11 people from 1,000 backers. So my final pitch to you is, come on.
That's right. Come on. It is. There we are. Look at that. Yeah. I mean, we're almost there. We're almost to some of that juicy weirdness overflowing.
Yes, that's true.
Is that right? Overflowing? Am I saying that right?
Weirdness overflowing.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, speaking of weirdness overflowing, don't forget to check us out on Monday. We have Mutants and Masterminds Monday. That happens at 2 p.m. Pacific. Just here in the same place. I just changed some of the curtains out and dust the place a bit. And then we will be, we got some good things coming on Monday. And then Malcolm, we'd love to have you back for another ThursdAGE, just to kind of give us a Cthulhu Awakens update. But we'll bug you about it a little closer to the day.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. That's right. You do get to, the stars have aligned. I'm coming from the deep. Bye, everyone. I'll see you later tonight.